Hey mga kawawmat, in this video we will discuss applying triangle congruence to construct perpendicular lines and angle bisectors. In this video, we will recall conditions on triangle congruence postulates and theorems. We will illustrate perpendicular lines and angle bisectors by construction, and we will apply triangle congruence involving perpendicular lines and angle bisectors. So let us recall first the triangle congruence postulates and theorems. So we have these congruence postulates for any triangles, and this congruence theorem and postulates for right triangles. So these are the theorems and postulates we use to identify congruent triangles. So state the postulate or theorem to prove that the triangles are congruent. So the first figure, this is side, angle, side. This is an included angle. So this is by SAS congruence postulate. Next is we have three sides of the triangle which is congruent to the three sides of another triangle. So this is by SSS congruence postulate. And this one we have angle, the included side, and the angle. So this is ASA congruence postulate. Next, we have the angle, two angles, and non-included side. So this is AAS congruence theorem. So these are the triangle congruence postulates and theorem. Now let's talk about the right triangle congruence theorem. So this is just a recall. So we have the HA congruence theorem. We have triangle ACB is congruent to triangle OST. So as you can see, these two triangles are congruent because of their hypotenuse and the acute angle. So since we have the hypotenuse and the acute angle, so therefore these two triangles are congruent by HA congruence theorem. And then this one, since we have two legs, so this is your first leg which is congruent to this leg, and then this one is congruent to this leg. So we have two legs here, so this is by leg congruence theorem. And then for LA congruence theorem, so we must have the leg and the acute angle. So this is your leg, the congruent parts of the two triangles, and your acute angles, which is angle A and angle O. So as you can see, we have the leg and the angle. So these two triangles are congruent by LA congruence theorem. And the last one, we have HL congruence postulate. We have the hypotenuse. So they are congruent sa hypotenuse and yung leg nila. So that is segment CB is congruent to segment ST, that is the leg. So these two triangles are congruent by HL congruence postulate. Now, what is an angle bisector? So an angle bisector is a line, a segment, or a ray that divides an angle into two equal parts. So ito yung pag sinabi nating bisector, when you hear the word bisector, so ang goal po niyan, ang trabaho niyan is naghinahati niya. It divides the segment or the ray into two congruent parts. But since this is an angle bisector, so it divides the angle into two congruent parts. So given any triangle ABC, so let us try to construct bisector of angle ABC. So paano nga ba tayo nagko-construct ng angle bisector? So dapat alam natin. So when we are constructing angle bisector, we must have this figure. So meron tayong mga fine lines dyan, may mga arcs tayo as our guide in constructing angle bisector. So paano ba to ginagawa? Watch this video. Alright, so how do we construct an angle bisector? Okay, so first step is dapat given yung angle. Okay, kasi ito yung ibabisect natin. So ang unang-una mong gagawin is, of course, you must have your compass. Okay, your compass, your pencil, your eraser, and your ruler as your straight edge. So kailangan kasi natin ng straight edge. Ngayon, itong nakikita nating sukat dito, hindi po natin yan gagamitin. Okay? So, gagamitin lang natin ang ruler para makapag-mark tayo or makapag-construct tayo ng straight edge. Okay. So, first step, pag sinabi kasi nating angle bisector, iba-bisect niya yung angle. So, I have here angle ABC. Okay, so meron tayo ditong angle ABC where B is your vertex. Now, kapag nagko-construct tayo ng angle bisector, so eto, iset up nyo yung inyong compass. Ang compass po is, eto po yung ating center point. So, yung center point, ilalagay nyo po sa vertex. Okay? And then, nasa inyo kung gaano kalaki yung radius. Pag sinabi nating radius, yung distance ng center point dun sa pencil point mo. Okay? So, yun po yung radius natin. Now, alright. So, ilagay po natin yung center point dito sa vertex ng angle. And then, gagawa po tayo ng arc kahit anong radius. Okay? Kahit anong radius. Kahit gaano, nasa inyo yan kung gusto nyong lakihan yung radius niya or maliit lang. Okay? So, ayan po. So, maglalagay tayo ng arc dito. Okay. So, make sure na naka-fix yung inyong center point ha. Dapat hindi siya gumagalaw. Okay. So, lagay tayo ng radius, ng arc. Okay. Now, ito, meron na tayong, as you can see, meron tayong dalawang point dito. Okay? Meron tayong dalawang point. Now, ayan ang magsisilbing guide din natin para gumawa pa ng panibagong arc dito sa gitna ng ating angle o dun sa interior ng ating angle. Okay? So, gawa tayo. Pwede nyong lakihan yung inyong compass. Okay? Basta, kung ito yung ginamit nyong radius o distance, dapat yun din po, ito na po. Fix na po. Ito rin ang gagamitin ninyo dito sa isang point. Okay? So, gawa tayo ng arc. Okay? Next, ito rin po yung radius, yung lapad na gagamitin ninyo dito sa isang point. Okay. Okay, now. So, form tayo ng intersection. Asan ang intersection natin dito? Ito po. Okay? So, kung sana nakikita, meron tayong intersection. Okay? Now, ang gagawin natin is i-connect natin itong intersection ng dalawang arc natin doon sa ating vertex. Okay? So, we will have this point connecting to the vertex of the angle. Okay? So, do not forget your arrow kasi yan po ay ray. Now, so let us name this point as point D. Okay, so halimbawa, this is point D. Now, so let us complete the table. Okay, let us complete the following. So, I have here blank is the angle bisector of angle ABC. So, alin dito from the given construction, which is the angle bisector. So, alin dito yung nagsilbing angle bisector o yung naghati sa dalawang angle natin. Kaya meron na tayong dalawang angle dito. Okay? So, pag sinabi kasi natin bisector, hinahati niya yung angle, si angle ABC, ng dalawang congruent parts. Okay, so, alin ngayon dito ang ating angle bisector? So, we have ray BD. Okay, so ray BD is the angle bisector of angle ABC. Okay, so since binisect niya tong angle na to, itong buo na to, binisect niya, okay, hinati niya yung buong angle. So, ibig sabihin, nakabuo tayo ng dalawang congruent angles. So, ano yung dalawang angle na yon? We have angle ABD. Okay, angle ABD is congruent to angle DBC. Okay, so angle ABD is congruent to angle DBC. Why? Kasi po, meron siyang angle bisector na ray BD. Now, how do we construct perpendicular bisector of a segment? So, before we construct, let us define first what is perpendicular bisector. So, say perpendicular bisector of a segment, this is a line which is perpendicular to the segment at its endpoint, so, midpoint rather. So, ibig sabihin, your perpendicular bisector contains your midpoint. So, kapag meron tayong perpendicular bisector, ibig sabihin meron tayong midpoint. Saan nakikita ang midpoint? Doon sa segment na binabisect natin. So, the midpoint of a segment is said to bisect a segment. The bisector could be the midpoint of a segment or any line, plane ray, or segment which contains the midpoint. So, let's have the given which I have segment AB. So, ito po yung given natin. Now, let us bisect, okay, let us form a perpendicular bisector of segment AB. So, we should come up with this illustration. So, let us construct this figure. Watch the video. Okay, so let's have the second one. So how are we going to construct the perpendicular bisector of a segment? So as you can see, we have here segment AB. Okay, so iset up ninyo yung inyong compass. Okay, so kung ito yung radius na gagamitin ninyo, ito na po all throughout. Okay, so ang first step natin is kung ito yung dulo ng line, ng segment. Okay. So, gagawa ulit tayo ng arc. Now, make sure na yung arc na gagawin po natin is itansyahin natin or i-estimate natin na kahit papano lampas siya dun sa kalahati ng segment. Okay? So, ilampas natin siya kahit papano dun sa kalahati ng segment. So, let us form the arc. Okay, now, so since ito yung radius na ginamit ninyo dito, so yun din po ang gagamitin natin sa kabila. Make sure na hindi po siya gagalaw. Okay, ulitin natin. Okay, so let's have this. Ayun. Okay, isa pa para makita lang ninyo yung line. Okay, so meron na po tayong dalawang arcs. Now, ano po ang gagawin natin dito? Iko-connect po natin yung dalawang intersection. So, meron tayo ditong nabuo na dalawang intersection. This is your first point. Okay? And then this is your second point. Now, let us name this point as C. And then this one as D. Okay. So, i-connect po natin ito. So, this is how we construct the bisector of a segment. Hindi po yan basta na gagawa tayo ng line. And kaya siya tinawag na construction is we are not allowed to use measurements. Okay? So, hindi tayo gagamit niyan. Okay. So, meron tayong nabuong dalawang point dito, dalawang intersection. Ang gagawin po natin is i-connect po natin yung dalawang points na to. Okay, so we have now a line. Okay, lagyan natin ng arrow. Ganon din po sa baba. Okay, so meron na po tayong line CD dito. So, ito po yung point na yon at ito. Okay, now, from the given line, na kung saan binisect niya yung segment AB, so yung itong CD na to, siya yung bisector. Okay? Siya yung bisector ni AB. Now, dito sa ating bisector, meron tayong isa pang point dito na kung saan this is what we call the midpoint. Ito ngayon yung midpoint. Midpoint ng ano? Ng AB. Pag sinabing midpoint, siya yung gitna. Okay? Siya yung gitna. So, let us name this point as point E. Okay, so let us name this point as point E. So, this is your midpoint. Okay, this is your bisector. Or, ito rin po ay tinatawag nating perpendicular bisector. Why? Kasi po, yung line niya, nag-touch siya doon sa midpoint ng segment. Okay? So, kapag ang line ninyo ay tumama dun sa midpoint ng segment mo, hindi lang siya basta perpendicular. Okay? Hindi lang siya basta line na perpendicular dun sa segment. It is now perpendicular bisector. So, hindi lang siya basta perpendicular. Perpendicular bisector po siya. Why? Kasi ang tinamaan niya yung midpoint. Pag sinabing midpoint, siya yung pinakagitna. So, therefore, itong dalawa, equal to. So, ang midpoint, hinahati niya itong segment into two congruent parts. Okay? So, we now have this construction. Now, we can now complete the following. Okay? So, from the given construction, we have here, number 1, blank bisect AB, segment AB at E. So, ano yung naging bisector o perpendicular bisector? So, again ha, the bisector of a segment, ito po yung bisector of a segment, is also called the perpendicular bisector. Kasi po, once na nag-bisect siya sa midpoint, automatic, they are perpendicular. Nagpo-form siya ng right angle dyan. Okay? So, bisector or perpendicular bisector. So, based dito sa ating construction, alin po dito ang bisector, ang nag-bisect sa segment AB? We have line CD. Okay, so isulat natin dito si line CD. Now, so saan siya tumama? Sa midpoint natin na E. Next, blank is the midpoint of AB. So, what is the midpoint? Ano yung pinakagitnang point? That is point E. Okay? And then, since midpoint nga siya, ang ginagawa ng midpoint ay hinahati niya yung segment into two congruent parts. Therefore, ano yung dalawang segment na congruent? So, we have segment AE is congruent to segment EB. Okay? So, segment AE is congruent to segment EB. Why? Kasi this is the midpoint. So, kapag meron tayong midpoint, automatic, it divides the segment into two congruent segments. Now, let's talk about perpendicular lines. Ano ba ang difference ng perpendicular lines sa perpendicular bisector? So, perpendicularity is not limited to lines only. It can be as segments or rays. So, pwede rin po silang magamit natin for us to form perpendicular lines. And then again, kagaya nga ng binanggit natin sa mga previous slide and construction, perpendicular bisector of a segment is a line. It can be a ray or a segment, which is perpendicular to the segment, another segment at its midpoint. So, therefore, pag sinabi natin perpendicular bisector, like what I said earlier, ang trabaho po nito is to bisect. So, nagkakaroon tayo dito ng congruent segments na kung saan yung perpendicular bisector mo, it contains your midpoint. Okay? So, automatic yun. Kapag may bisector ka, may midpoint po tayo sa segment. So, I have here, so halimbawa, meron akong segment AB, and then ito po yung ating midpoint. Pag yung midpoint po ang tinambaan ng ating perpendicular line, so let's say ito po, meron ako ditong line CD. Pag tinamaan po nitong line na to yung midpoint ni segment AB, therefore, perpendicular bisector po ang tawag natin dito. At ang trabaho po niyan, magfo-form po siya ng right angle, two right angles, dito at dito sa kabila, and nagfo-form po yan ng two congruent segments. Since midpoint po siya, it contains the midpoint of the segment. This is your segment AB. Ito yung midpoint ni segment AB. So, meron po yan dalawang congruent segments. At the same time, magfo-form po yan ng right angle. So, your CD here is the perpendicular bisector. Well, this is just a perpendicular line. Okay, so here, line CD is perpendicular to line AB. While here, line CD is the perpendicular bisector of line AB. Segment AB. Okay, so again, ulitin ko. Dito po, this is just a perpendicular lang po siya kasi nag-form siya ng right angle, two right angles. Pero hindi siya bisector, hindi po siya perpendicular bisector kasi hindi po siya dun sa midpoint nung line niya dumaan. Okay, so it does not contain the midpoint unlike this one. So we have line CD is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB since it contains the midpoint of your segment and it forms two congruent segments. So, given this figure, what conclusion can you make? So, the first one is, since line CD is a perpendicular bisector, therefore, it will form right angles. Automatic yan, kapag perpendicular, it will form right angles. So, therefore, angle CDA and CDB are right angles. And then number 2, since line CD bisects segment AB, therefore segment AB will be divided into two congruent segments, which are segment AD and segment DB. So, yun po ang trabaho ng perpendicular bisector. So, based dito sa ating mga statements, anong conclusion ang mabubuo natin? That angle CDA and angle CDB are right angles since perpendicular bisector to, magfo-form yan ng right angles. And another one is segment AD is congruent to segment DB. Since perpendicular bisector siya, magfo-form po yan ng two congruent segments. So, ito po ang ating conclusion. Let's have another example. So, I have here a isosceles triangle ENA with M as the midpoint. So, pag sinabi nating midpoint, pinakagitna yan ni segment EA. Now, based dito sa given natin na illustration, we can say that these two angles are congruent. Why? These are called base angles. Paano natin nasabi that these two angles are congruent? Based doon sa mga previous lesson natin about isosceles triangle theorem, that if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides are also congruent. So, kung congruent itong dalawang sides mo, ibig sabihin yung opposite angles yan congruent din. So, yun po yung makukonclude natin dito based sa ating figure kasi isosceles siya. So, letter A, show that segment NM is the perpendicular bisector of segment EA. So, how are we going to illustrate that segment NM is the perpendicular bisector of segment EA? So, ito po yung ating N, ito po yung ating M. So, make sure that, that when we are constructing a perpendicular bisector, dapat it contains the midpoint since that is a bisector. So, tatandaan na kapag bisector, dapat it contains the midpoint. So, hindi pwedeng maggagawa ka ng perpendicular bisector and then dito ang daan niya. So, hindi po yun bisector. Okay? So, dapat it contains the midpoint. So, what can we conclude? That since we have perpendicular bisector of segment EA, therefore, we can say that these two segments are congruent. So, we can say that segment NM is the perpendicular bisector of segment EA since it passes through its midpoint. So, ito nga po yung sinasabi ko that if the line contains the midpoint, then that is a perpendicular bisector. And then we can also say that segment EM is congruent to segment AM. Since perpendicular bisector yan, magpo-form rin po yan ng dalawang congruent segments aside from forming two right angles. Next, name the two right angles. So, ito na nga po. So, what are the two right angles? We have angle NME and NMA are two right angles. Name the two congruent triangles. So, since these two triangles are congruent, paano natin nasabing congruent sila? Because we have these three corresponding parts na congruent. So, meron tayong 3 parts dito na congruent dito sa corresponding parts ng isang triangle mo. So, ibig sabihin, these two triangles are congruent. So, we can say that triangle ENM is congruent to triangle ANM. Or pwede rin namang EMAN is congruent to triangle AMN. Okay? So, since these two triangles are congruent, by what postulator theorem justifies that these two triangles are congruent? By SAS congruence postulate. Since we have here, two sides are congruent, the included angle and the another side. Let's have example number 2. I have here isosceles triangle SIM. So we have here an isosceles triangle. As you can see, we have two sides of the triangle that are congruent with a right angle at I. So ito daw pong angle natin, angle I, is a right angle. So since right angle siya, ibig sabihin ang measure po nito ay 90 degrees. And meron pa po tayo ditong point T on segment SM. So, if this is your segment SM, meron tayong point T. Okay. So, let us conclude that these two angles are congruent. Why? Kasi since this is an isosceles triangle based dito sa given natin, we can conclude that these two angles, at ito yung tinatawag nating base angles dun sa parts ng ating isosceles triangle. So, ito pong two angles na to ay congruent dahil yung two sides niya ay congruent. So, based sa ating isosceles triangle theorem, that if two sides of the triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides are also congruent. So, therefore, these two angles are congruent. So, let us show that segment IT is an angle bisector of angle SIM. If this is your angle SIM, ito pong may right angle tayo dito. So, meron daw po tayong angle bisector. So, this is your angle bisector. So, as you can see, it passes through your point T, which is nandun sa ating segment SM. Okay? So, meron tayong angle bisector na IT. So, we can say that these two angles are congruent since binisect niya si angle SIM. Okay, binisect niya si angle SIM, so ibig sabihin makakapag-form siya ng dalawang congruent angle. So kung ito ay 90, ibig sabihin tig 45 sila, 45 degrees. And since this is an angle bisector, makakapag-form din po tayo dito ng right angle since it is also perpendicular. Why? Kasi po since isosceles yan, magpo-form po yan ng perpendicular lines. So, your segment IT is an angle bisector of angle SIM. Since it divides the angle into two congruent angles, so we have angle SIT is congruent to angle MIT since pareho silang 45 degrees. Also, this is also your segment IT is also a perpendicular bisector to SM, your segment SM at point T. So, name the congruent base angles. So, binanggit ko to kanina. So, what are the base angles that are congruent? So, we have angle ISM is congruent to angle IMS. So, these two angles are congruent. So, kung congruent sila, ibig sabihin, paano natin nakuha na 45 ito? So, since ito ay 90, since 90 yan pareho, so 90 plus 45, that is 135. We have the triangle sum theorem. Ano po yon? Na dapat ang interior ng triangle natin ay 180. So, kung 90 na to, ito 45, therefore this is 45. Okay? And since this is congruent to this angle, therefore this is also 45 degrees. So, name the congruent triangle. So, we have triangle SIT is congruent to triangle MIT. Why? What postulate or theorem? By ASA congruence postulate. Why? Because we have here the angle, the included side, and the congruent angle. So we have the first angle, the included side, and the another angle, which is congruent to another triangle, angle of another triangle. So we have ASA. Next, I have here triangle JOY with OS as the perpendicular bisector of segment JY. So, since binanggit dito na bisector, ibig sabihin, magpo-form po yan ng dalawang right angles. Okay? Also, magpo-form po yan ng dalawang congruent segments. Since bisector yan, so your S here, ibig sabihin is your midpoint. Automatic yon na kapag meron po tayong bisector, it contains your midpoint. Okay? So, S here is the midpoint. So, name the congruent segments. Kung ito ay midpoint at ito ay perpendicular bisector, then your congruent segments are, we have segment JS is congruent to segment YS. Next, name the two right angles. So, since we have perpendicular bisector, it will always form two right angles. So, we have angle OSJ and angle OSY are right angles. Name the midpoint of segment JY. Since we have the perpendicular bisector, automatic, it contains your midpoint. So, your midpoint here is point S. I have here AS is an angle bisector of angle CAN. So, this is your CAN. And then, this is your angle bisector. So, kung ito po ay angle bisector, it will form two right angles. So, itong angle na to, congruent yan dito. Kasi po, angle bisector siya. Binisect. Hinati niya po itong angle na to, si angle CAN. Now, since aside from this, dito sa dalawang congruent angles mo, it will also form right angles dito sa iyong perpendicular lines. Okay? So, we have here angle 1. So, ito po yung mga angles natin. Your angle 1 measures 50 degrees. And your angle 2 measures 3x plus 5 degrees. So, first is find x. So, find the value of x. So, paano natin makukuha itong value of x natin? So, gamitin natin yung concept ng angle bisector. Since si angle 1 at si angle 2 are two congruent angles, based dito kasi binisect siya ni segment AS. So, si angle 1 at si angle 2 ay congruent angles. So, kung congruent angles sila, ibig sabihin yung measures nila are equal. So, si 3x plus 5, so si 3x plus 5 is equal to 50 kasi congruent angles yan. So, ibig sabihin ang measures niyan equal. So, equate lang po natin sila. Let us solve for x. So, that is 3x is equal to 50. Transpose natin ito. That will become minus 5. So, 3x is equal to 45. Divide both sides by 3. So, 45 divide 3, x is equal to 15. Okay, so your x is equal to 15. That is for letter A. Now, let us find the measure of angle 2. Your angle 2 is 3x plus 5. So, kunin natin si 3x plus 5. I-substitute natin si 15 dun sa x. So, that is 3 times 15 plus 5. And that is 3 times 5, that is 45, plus 5, that is 50. So, as you can see, the measure of angle 2, which is 50, is equal to the measure of angle 1. Next. So, this is 50 degrees. Next, for us to find the measure of angle 3, since this is a triangle, ano pong gagawin natin dito? Dapat ang sum po ng interior angles niyan ay 180. So, i-add natin si 50, ito po ay 90, ito ang hinahanap natin. So, equate lang po natin. So, we have the measure of angle 3 is equal to 180. This is 140. Transpose natin. That will become minus 140. And 180 minus 140, that is 40. So the measure of angle 3 is equal to 40. So this is 40 degrees. Now, since these two angles are congruent, so ibig sabihin 50 rin to. And since nagpo-form ito ng dalawang right angles, ibig sabihin 90 rin to. So kung ito ay 90 at ito ay 50, ibig sabihin this is also 30 degrees. I mean 40 degrees. So your angle 4, the measure of angle 4 is equal to 40. Next, suppose that D is the midpoint of segment AC. So D is the midpoint of segment AC. And then this AD, segment AD is equal to 9x. And segment DC is equal to x plus 4. Now, we all know that since we have the midpoint, ibig sabihin, meron tayong two congruent segments dyan kasi midpoint ito. So, itong dalawa ay congruent. So, para makuha natin si AC, itong buo, kailangan makuha muna natin yung measure nito at measure nito. So, paano? Kailangan makuha natin yung value ng x. So, equate lang po natin sila. Bakit ko ginawang equal? So, 9x is equal to x plus 4. Because these two segments are congruent. So, if these two segments are congruent, therefore, their measures are equal. So, equate natin siya. So, solve for x. So, 9x minus x plus is equal to 4. That is 8x is equal to 4. So, that is 1 half. Your x is equal to 1 half or 0.5. So, pag sinubstitute natin dito sa 0.5, 9 times 1 half or 9 times 0.5, that is 4.5. Ganon din po sa kabila, 0.5 plus 4, so 4.5. So, as you can see, they are equal. Now, para tinatanong dito yung segment AC. Para makuha natin si AC, we need to add AD plus DC. Nakuha na natin si AD which is 4.5 at si DC which is 4.5. So, that is equal to 9. So, your AC is equal to 9. Next, suppose that D is the midpoint of AC, segment AC, your segment AD is 3x plus 2. Ito po yun. And then your segment DC is 5x. So, paano po natin siya kukunin? So, since congruent nga po itong segments natin, find AC. So, equate lang po natin. So, 3x plus 2 is equal to 5x. So, that is 5x minus 3x is equal to 2. That is 2x is equal to 2. So, divide both sides by 2. Your x is equal to 1. So, 2 divide 2, that is 1. So, since x is equal to 1, 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2, this is 5. 5 times 1, your x is 1. So, 5 times 1, that is also 5. So, 5 po itong sukat ng dalawang segments po natin. So, now, para makuha natin ang pinapahanap ay AC. Para makuha natin yun, i-add natin si AD at si DC. So, we have 5 plus 5, your AC is equal to 10. Next, so suppose that segment BD is an angle bisector of angle ABC. If the measure of angle ABD, so ito po yung angle ABD natin, if this is 30 degrees, okay, 30 po yun, what is the measure of angle A? So, paano natin to kukunin? So, i-add lang po natin. Dapat 180 po ang interior angles ng triangle natin. So, 30 plus 90 plus the measure of angle A, dapat ang total po niyan 180. Let us solve. So, 180, 90 plus 30, that is 120. Transpose natin, that will become minus 120. So, the measure of angle A is equal to 180 minus 120, that is 60. So, therefore, the measure of angle A is 60 degrees. Next. Suppose that BD, segment BD is an angle bisector of angle ABC. If the measure of angle ABD is x, ito po. If x and CBD is 2x minus 30, then what is the value of x? So, since angle bisector po ito, ibig sabihin, Etong dalawang angles po natin ay congruent angles. So, kung congruent angles sila, ibig sabihin they must be equal. So, equate lang po natin to. Si x at si 2x minus 30. So, let us solve for x. We have 30. 2x minus x, so that is x is equal to 30. So, we have 2x, transpose natin to, minus 2, minus x, transpose to, magpa-positive 30. So, we have x, ayusin na lang po natin, ang variable natin, dapat nasa left side. So, x is equal to 30. So, if x is equal to 30, ito po yun, if your x is equal to 30, that is angle ABD. So, ibig sabihin, this is 30 degrees. Okay? Now, i-check natin. So, kailangan pa ba natin kunin si angle CBD? Ito po, kahit hindi na, kasi ito po ay congruent angles. Dahil ito po ay angle bisector, so congruent angles yan. This is also 30 degrees. But we can check. Pwede natin i-check. The measure of angle CBD is equal to 2x minus 30. Substitute natin sa 30. So, 2 times 30, that is 60 minus 30. So, the measure of angle CBD is also equal to 30.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button para updated kayo for more video tutorial. This is your guide in learning your math lesson, your Wow Math channel.